Hey, what's up everybody? It's Nicholas Davenport, aka Mr. Mental Muscle, and we're back to Mental Muscle Talks. Now, have you ever wondered why some people are just able to execute at the highest level no matter the standard or situation, while others, when the pressure's on, they fall by the wayside? Well, we all might be familiar with the phenomenon called choking. Now, it's happened to me, it's probably even happened to you, but have you wondered why this even takes place? Because this can affect anyone, whether it be a sport, taking a test at school, a job interview, or even a hot date. So regardless of what you're doing, when the pressure's on, it can negatively affect us. Now, I want to talk about at least what even happens when you succumb to choking. Now, the first thing we got to talk about is the stress response. You might know it as fight or flight, and this is the emotional response to when we're in a dangerous situation or a perceived threat. Now, it doesn't have to necessarily be something dangerous or a threat, but if we perceive it as such, a lot of physical as well as emotional things happen. Now, typically our frontal lobe, that's in charge of rational thought, executive functioning, processing, working memory, decision-making, things of that nature. But when we go into fight or flight mode, the amygdala, this is our emotional response center, tells us to just act. Now, this can be beneficial if you just need to get away or just neutralize what you're in. But if it takes a higher level of processing, we don't really want this to happen. So this impairs our actual working memory, which is how our brain takes in real-time information, manipulates it to use it to figure out what's going on, and relay long-term memory to bring it to the forefront to rationalize what to make sense of in real time. So if this is impaired, it'll be hard to understand what's happening in a pressure situation. You can see how this could affect you when you're choking, because you need to recall what you know. If you've ever taken a test or had something happen and you blank out, you can't remember, wait, what was I supposed to do? And this is why, because now the working memory can't do its job and process real-time information and make sense of everything while everything is happening around you. Now, another aspect why choking can occur is something called paralysis by analysis. This is when we let things that are innate or learned skills become more to the forefront. Typically, if you learn how to do something, you don't have to think about it too much. Imagine when you first learned how to ride a bike. It was awkward at first. One foot down, next foot down, and you're wobbling and shaking. You might have fell down and skinned your knee a few times. But once you learned it, riding a bike became effortless. And this is how it should be with every task or endeavor that you're doing. Now, the problem is when we have paralysis by analysis, we give so much attention to the fine motor functions that it takes away the cognitive load to actually process the important things that's happening around us to make the decision or make the shot or make the test, whatever it is. It gets less attention to that, and the small, fine skill that's needed to do the task is more emphasized when it is typically effortless in the back burner. So these things contribute to choking, but if you look at it from a more psychological standpoint, you can see it as not having enough resources for the demand of pressure. Now, I like to use an analogy of something like a bank. Think about it. If you have a certain amount of money, let's say $1,000 into your account, you're paying your bills, some things come out regularly on a reoccurring basis, and then one day you go to the coffee shop to get a cup of coffee, you swipe your card and it says decline. Embarrassing, right? You start thinking, wait, what? I thought I had money. I paid everything and I should have a few dollars left. And then you look in your account and it's negative 200. Guess what? You didn't have enough money to pay for a cup of coffee, something that's pretty simple and you've probably done hundreds of times, right? But guess what? And that panic mode is just like choking. You didn't have enough resources to pay for that cup of coffee, and it ignites a bunch of responses that make you freak out and not perform your best. Now, guess what? If you have enough resources, it just goes through smoothly and you execute. And it's the same thing that happens when you choke under pressure. So you can see all these things going on from a physiological aspect as well as psychological, not having enough resources, your brain literally going into fight or flight mode, making you panic, can all lead to choking under pressure. But let's talk about some ways to combat that so it can help you overcome the pressure and thrive when it matters most. Now, if you ever heard of visualization, this is something when you see in your mind's eye and picture the actual task, the actual goal, whatever you're trying to do happening within your mind. Now, there's a lot of research that backs this up, because what happens is the neurons have to fire even when you're imagining it, because it's simulating what actually needs to happen. So when these neurons fire, it's as if you've done it already. Think about like a dream. Have you ever woken up from a dream or a nightmare even? You're getting chased by like a lion and you wake up breathing hard, heart racing. It's because the perception of that signaled the stress response and it thought it was real. The same thing happens with visualization, but this is controlled and led by you. Now, just don't visualize the good outcome, also visualize the bad outcomes. Visualize the things that could go wrong, the bumps in the road, because once again, you want to be as if you've been there before. I always say you could be a tourist or a resident when it comes to stress and pressure. You want to be the resident. You've been there, you've seen it, you're used to it. The tourists, they've not seen it, they're overwhelmed. Be the resident. So make sure you picture both outcomes, not just the good, but also the things that could go wrong. Another skill I use is something I call bad practice. Now, obviously you want to be efficient when you practice, whether it's taking a test, practicing your jump shot, fighting, whatever it is, you need to be efficient in your form. But when I say bad, I mean have the environment, the stimuli, things that happen that could distract you. Make that take place when you're practicing, because too often we practice in the best conditions. Now, obviously you need to practice in good conditions to learn a skill and get used to it. But once you get used to it, you need to add this pressure, because once again, it's simulating how you get used to the task when it's not in the best scenario, and you acclimate to it as if you've been there. Now, you can do it by adding noise to distract you, or even time limits. This is one of the best ways to add pressure, is with time restraints. If it typically takes a minute to do the task, give yourself 45 seconds or 30 seconds even, because that's going to put more pressure and you're going to feel rushed and you might not be able to handle it. But guess what? You'll adapt and overcome the more you do it. So try a little bit of bad practice when you're training or doing whatever you're getting ready for. Now, another thing I've noticed is a lot of people have rituals, things that get them in the mindset to perform. Now, this is okay, but I actually promote routines, not rituals. And this is the difference to me. Rituals are more so tied into an outcome. If I do this ritual before my task, this is the outcome I expect. But guess what? We can't really control outcomes. There's always variables that we don't have control over that can affect us. But with a routine, it's more so about understanding what mood or mind state you're in before taking on the task. This could be something as simple as taking a few deep breaths and then saying a cue word like, let's get it. Or you could maybe slap your knee and then picture what's going to take place, something to get you alert, and then you visualize. So you see how this gets you ready, but also say, what mindset was I in before I executed the task? Because too often when I ask clients, so what'd you do? How'd you feel when it happened? They'll be like, I don't know, I just did it. But we need to know what happened, whether it be a good outcome, whether you won the game or did well on the test, or a bad outcome, you failed, but you know what it took and know how you felt before you went into it, so you can recalibrate. Because when we choke, oftentimes we need to relive it at least once or twice to see where it went wrong, and you want to have as much details as possible. Now, to come back to when I talked about analysis by paralysis, this goes into internal focus versus external focus. Now, they both have their role. Now, internal focus means being more mindful of the fine motor movements, the things that go into doing the task or what you need to do specifically, while external focus is more so the outcome or just the doing of said task. For example, there was a study where they took some college football players and they had them do the 40-yard dash. Now, one group was given internal focus, where they focus on their arm swing, their knee drive, while the other group focused on the external of cover ground and get to the finish line. They saw that the group that had external focus ran faster than their baseline 40, and you can attribute this because the outcome of just going, just do it. When we choke, we typically give a lot of attention to what's going on internally. So you can see how this can carry over. Now, internal does have its place, but that's usually when you're doing something very fine motor skill related and you have more time to worry about it. When you're choking under pressure, it's typically when things are happening all at once and real fast. So that's why an external focus is very important. You should get used to that more so. Now, this last thing I'll talk about when it comes to preventing choking is having a pressure mindset. I call it a pressure mindset because when the pressure is on, you can see it as something that you're ready for or want to take on full force, or something that kind of seems threatening and you're not sure. Either way you look at it, it's going to add into the outcome that you're trying to achieve. So if you have a pressure mindset that says, I want this pressure, I can thrive in it, it's going to push you forward. While if you have the opposite, it's going to pull you back. So the pressure mindset is all about being able to internalize whatever stress or pressure in a way that I understand it's there. I know that's going to affect me, but I have the ability to overcome, and I'm going to do what's needed. And that way, you're already ready for it. You're welcoming it. It's not saying you want to falter under it, but you know that it is a factor, that it can happen. And this gives you the likeness to say, hey, this is nothing. Let me just do what I came to do, and this is easy. Now, those are just a few things that help you overcome stress, and it's not something you just get overnight. You have to practice these skills just like anything else, because this is important, because there's after effects about choking that can affect us, because it makes us more timid to want to try again. And guess what? we repeat it. People talk about PTSD, and obviously with more severe things that can occur. But even with these, with a sport performance, a job interview, it comes back to us because our memory triggers when we're under pressure, and it usually brings up the negative experiences because that will protect us. But sometimes this protection can be too much, and it makes us not perform our best. So thanks for tuning in, guys. I appreciate your time. And as always, get your mind right.